Glad to have you join us now and hear some of the reports we're filing at this hour. I am Frank Komalape. And now the World Bank Group has raised the alarm that developing countries are facing currency depreciation and capital outflows challenges that could affect their future. World Bank Group President David Malpass disclosed this at the Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research ahead of the 2022 annual meetings in Washington, D.C. The World Bank president noted a series of harsh events and unprecedented macroeconomic policies are combining to throw development into crisis. He said the bank's financing to developing countries has expanded dramatically in recent years, especially for climate-related finance, which reached $31.7 billion in fiscal year 2022. Malpass said these shockwaves have hit development at a time when many developing countries are also struggling in other areas: governance and rule of law, debt sustainability, climate adaptation and mitigation, and limited fiscal budget to counteract the severe reversals in development from the COVID-19 pandemic, including health and education. Similarly, the International Monetary Fund has attributed the food crisis currently ravaging Nigeria and other sub-Saharan countries to over-reliance on imported foods. In a new report titled "Africa Food Prices Are Soaring Amid High Import Reliance," the Washington-based lender said staple food prices in sub-Saharan Africa surged by an average 23.9% in 2020 to 2022. The most since the 2008 global financial crisis. According to the report, the increase was commensurate with an 8.5% rise in the cost of a typical food consumption basket beyond generalized price increases. The report said that global factors were partly to blame because of the region's import of top staple foods, noting that the pass-through from global to local food prices was significant. It noted that in Nigeria, the prices of both cassava and maize more than doubled, even though they were mainly produced locally. And in the meantime, the monthly shortfall in revenue remittances to the power sector stand at 35 billion naira. The executive secretary of the Association of Power Generation Companies, Joy Ogaji, said on Thursday this amount to about 420 billion naira yearly. APGCs is the umbrella body of Nigeria's power generation companies. The GENCOs produce electricity which the Transmission Company of Nigeria evacuates to the power distribution companies known as DISCOs for onward distribution to end users. Responding to a question raised in a forum on whether Nigeria should build more open cycle gas turbines or combined cycle gas turbines, Ogaji stated that GENCOs were ready to construct these if there were enough funds. The GENCO's executive, however, noted that the power sector was currently suffering a shortfall of about 35 billion naira monthly, indicating that the challenge of funding in the industry was still persistent. And as a way of creating a viable option towards resolving the power crisis bedeviling the nation, stakeholders in the energy sector on Thursday held a critical discussion in Lagos. iBrandTV business correspondent Kalde Shopeto were attended the stakeholders conference. Has details.
As inability to achieve constant power supply has necessitated a meeting where stakeholders are considering a viable power solution. The Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria at its conference held on Tuesday, September 27, 2022, with the theme Renewable Energy, the Future is Here, as stakeholders on ground to discuss how small and medium-scale enterprises can key into financing for renewable energy. Speaking with iBrandTV, the president of the association, Mr. Shegun Adaji, revealed the idea behind the conference.
Talking about alternative power sources from renewable sources, and these are technologies that can replenish itself. Okay, so if you're talking of the sun comes out every day. All right. Talking of the wind blows without, you don't have to put fuel anywhere for the wind to blow. There's small hydro, little rivers flowing here and there. There's energy from waste, so you can convert all this to power. So that's what we're talking about here. And we know that the most common is solar, and one we can see very easily being deployed in Nigeria, but there are other technologies. So those are what we're saying that, look, the energy mix in Nigeria should incorporate these technologies.
A stakeholder in renewable energy highlighted some solutions already available with respect to renewable energy. Lack of adequate power supply has led to companies folding up in the country. Nigeria needs to do more to stabilize power supply, especially for businesses to thrive. Kayode Shokwekun, reporting for iBrandTV.
And in the meantime, the rising crude oil theft overwhelming Nigeria's energy business is biting deeper as the volume of gas the Nigeria LNG Limited can supply to the international market has declined by 38%, while liquefied natural gas LNG spot prices reached an oil equivalent of over $500 per million British thermat unit last month. LNG export from Nigeria plunged by 38% year-on-year, according to LNG data from Refinitiv Aecon, one of the world's largest providers of financial markets data. Olumide Ajayi, senior LNG analyst at London Stock Exchange Group, noted that much of the feed gas supply to Nigeria's LNG project at Bonny Island is derived from associated gas, hence the drop and the country's oil production on the back of upstream issues and crude theft has led to a sizable decline in feed gas supply to the facility. He, however, advised the federal government to model its LNG project for offshore gas field development in a vertical integrated fashion, which will increase supply of gas to the international market. The NLNG, which is jointly owned by the federal government and 3 international oil companies, was established in 1989 to harness Nigeria's vast natural gas resources and produce the LNG and natural gas liquefieds or liquids for export, but it started operations in 1999. And now the previous increase in Nigeria's interest rate benchmark has not been reflected positively in Nigeria's economy. This is according to public affairs analyst Nelson Ekujimi, who was a guest on iBrandTV Business Breakfast earlier.
The previous increment has not reflected positively on the economy. And because of the fact that some of the factors that have necessitated the inflationary rise are beyond the CBN. For example, we talk about the Russia-Ukraine war. You and I know very well that the CBN is not a party, and it was not the one that ignited it. It's a factor that has continued to cause inflationary crisis all over the world, not only in Africa or Nigeria alone. So what the CBN is doing is in line with its mandate. The CBN cannot just fold its arms and watch inflation rise to that astronomical level. The CBN cannot control flooding. You and I are very much aware that floods now, has caused the expected food crisis. It's going to cause an expected food crisis. You and I are also aware that insecurity, when people cannot go to the farms, because the greatest threat to our economy that has, shot up the inflationary index is insecurity is also part of it. When farmers cannot go to their farms, when the electricity is not, is not functional, we don't have, uninterrupted electricity. People have to buy diesel, and the consequences of the Ukraine-Russia war on the global price of energy. So it is within the confines of CBN at every point in time to be alive to its responsibility, not minding those factors that are outside its control. So I don't think the CBN is out of order in taking this measure.
And now Nigeria's federal government spent about 1.3 trillion naira to service domestic debts in the first half of 2022, representing an increase of 42.5% compared to 935.4 billion naira spent in the corresponding period of 2021. When compared to the second half of 2021, domestic debt service increased by 19.2% from 1.19 trillion naira. This is according to data released by the Debt Management Office. Recall Nigeria's total debt stock rose to a record high of $103.3 billion as of June 2022 from 41.61 trillion recorded as of the previous quarter. The breakdown of Nigeria's debt profile showed that domestic debt stood at $63.25 billion, while external debt was $40.06 billion. Nigeria's debt profile has been on the rise over the years following the crunch in revenue, with the economy running on a fiscal deficit in the last 13 years. And now the federal government has said that the maritime sector is responsible for the transportation of about 70% of globally traded goods. It also said that the sector was a major contributor to the nation's gross domestic product. The Minister of Transportation, Muazu Sambo, while speaking at the 2022 World Maritime Day in Lagos on Thursday, urged Nigeria to take advantage of the declaration by the International Maritime Organization to explore more partnerships. He said the country should demand an inclusive and fair distribution of global resources and deployment of relevant technology to aid the carbonization and control of maritime plastic litter and befouling.